Good morning, everybody. My name is Daniel from the Dominican Republic. And I want to ask a little question. What do you think that has in common one of the most successful and effective world peace ambassadors that the International Forum have seen with one of the most effective labor rights activists from Pakistan and one of the most inspiring activists for promotion of reforestation? They have something in common, and is that they are all children between 7 and 10 years old. These children, Samantha, she was very young when she became very curious about why the United States and the then Soviet Union were in this Cold War. So she wrote a couple of letters to the high hierarchies of the Soviet Union, and surprisingly they responded to her, something they sometimes didn't do to the peace ambassadors of the official ambassadors. And eventually she became such an important figure representing her country and mainly negotiating with the Soviet Union, to the point that they even created a stamp on her honor in the Soviet Union. We also have Iqbal. Iqbal was a child that was sold by his parents when he was just only 2 years old to a company. And he eventually became sort of a slave for this company. So he was working 18 hours, even literally enslaved. He tried to escape several times. He was brought by the police back. And at one point, he escaped and managed to go out of his town and became a public activist for the rights of children to not work. And he became such an important force that the Day Against Labor for Children is dedicated on him, because sadly he was assassinated in his country only when he was 12 years old. So the change he was creating was so huge that he was stepping on very powerful toes. Then we have a German child, Felix. He got inspired by African programs on reforestation and asked, why could not all countries plant 1 million trees? And this simple idea created a huge movement that actually got into the official UN system of climate change. Here you see in the screen the head of the International Panel on Climate Change. And it's very interesting, the slogan that it was created for this, that is, stop talking, start planting. And this simple idea started spreading, and it has been one of the most successful internal campaigns within the UN climate talks. I personally had the chance also to see the effects of this program when I came last year to Poland to the climate change conference. And in the negotiations, there were some young people giving chocolates to negotiators. And the chocolate was called Chocolate for Change. And it had a lot of nice messages about the importance of caring for nature and the importance of planting trees and the role that negotiators had in promoting these values in this very complex forum. And it has a very sweet message saying, like, please remember the children and this chocolate, the sweetness of the chocolate when you are negotiating. And it created a very, very nice environment, one of the few things about the negotiating environment that was present there. And a few months later, I have the chance to meet this boy, Sagar from Nepal. I was in the UN headquarters in an UNESCO event, and he was one of the panelists, just 14 years old. And it was very impressive when he told me that he was the world president of this movement of planting trees. And it's all handled by children. It was very impressive. And then I became reflecting, and I also want us to reflect. Are we talking about these cases that I'm explaining, extraordinary children? Children born with a genius, with special talents that few other children had. And I want to post the idea that maybe they were not so extraordinary, that possibly many children have the possibility of doing those kind of extraordinary and important things if they have the motivation and the chance and the space to do so, and that we, when we were children, we could have also begun trying to change the world as we're doing now, not necessarily waiting to have a master's degree, a PhD. And 10 years ago, I didn't thought like that. It was not my idea. And although I was very much into promoting the talent of children, I became a volunteer of UNICEF, and we began this crazy project in which we called Youth City Council. And the idea was to teach children and adolescents the good side of politics. In my country, Dominican Republic, corruption and lack of transparency is a huge issue that spreads into other problems. So we wanted to create like an educational project where children can learn the bright side of politics. And the idea was very simple. We were going to promote the creation of real youth and children city councils. And with this idea, we meant that we were going to do real elections with real children and adolescents candidates, and the children and adolescents of that community will vote for their representatives in a more transparent and clean way. And in that sense, we were very successful because we, and I say we, a whole group of we were mainly university volunteers that were sort of working with UNICEF, pushing this idea. And in that sense, we were successful. So we created more than 10 of these city councils, and they had very different way of organizing that the adults, they were not allowed to make personal attacks. No money could be invested, so it was a common pool of resources for all children. Something very important, the campaigns were based on ideas. No children could invite others or promote something that they could not comply. And they all have to go through a process of sharing ideas. So it was a very democratic learning participation, and it is still spreading in my country, and now it's being recognized internationally as a good practice. Back then, we only saw it as a project of democratic participation, and in that sense, it was successful. I have to leave the country to study abroad, so I left the project and went to study in Europe, then came back around 3 years later. And when I came back, I was amazingly surprised from very unexpected things. Children and adolescents, they got the project very more steps further than we ever thought possible. And in one community that is called Bani, we got a couple of children, and especially one children, that he lost 2 years of school because he didn't got legal papers. So when he became the official youth mayor of his community, he promoted an initiative in his community to help most children at his school to legalize them so they could not miss school as he did. And what they have to do to achieve this was incredible. They convinced the mayor to eliminate taxes. They negotiated with the National Office of Elections. They convinced lawyers to work for free. And they eventually became the official legal office advisor of the community for families, not only children, that have problems with legal papers, which is something that many NGOs tried before and couldn't do it. And a group of children, we're talking about 12, 13, 14 years old children, they achieved that complex system. And this is just one example of what was possible. Also in this same community, they've done something that is very rare. The way they work is this community have many neighborhood councils. So this is the way they implement projects. In most of the most vulnerable neighborhoods, there were no neighbor councils. So what the children did was that they created adults neighborhood councils, so they have someone to talk to. So they were organizing the adults and we're talking about 30 neighborhoods, and we're talking about that they legalized them, they check all the legal papers, they took them to the official governmental offices. And this is something that made me reflect about the real possibilities of children. I want now to just present you a short video that the BBC did when they visited the country a few years ago. They originally were going to look at the national elections, but when they were there, they found that also children had something interesting to share to the world. So we are now going to see this video and reflect a little bit on it.
There are plenty of smiles now, but conditions at this school in the Dominican town of Villa Altagracia are primitive, with children falling ill and even dying. It's water that's the problem. Either it's contaminated by sewage or there's none at all. But courtesy of a 15-year-old politician, a new water tank has arrived. I talked to my fellow councillors because I couldn't put up with these children having diseases, he says. I saw adults couldn't fix this, so I decided to fix it with the Municipal Youth Council. Yoneris Florentino's town council is elected by children, for children, and these groups are in areas all over the country. Even if they're not part of the official government, their power is real. It's an exchange, says one adult council president. They learn from this experience, and we learn from their innocence. It's that innocence that the program's organizers hope can have a lasting impact on Dominican politics. As the young Mayor Florentino helps kids leave school, grown-up presidential elections are just days away. Critics say corruption still lingers in politics, decades after the end of President Rafael Trujillo's authoritarian rule. The next generation is well aware. Unlike adult politicians, we can't bribe people and say, vote for me, and I will give you this, says a 12-year-old town councillor.
So, as we have seen in this video, there is a quite deep level of responsibility, of commitment, leadership from very young people. And I want now us to reflect a little bit when we were children. And I invite you to remember when you were maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. If you want, you can close your eyes. And remember how you felt the world. Remember when you were at nature, how you connected with, how easily you connect with everything. Remember how you felt emotions, how they were so vivid, so real, so powerful. Try to remember your imagination, how it was so broad, so dynamic, completely intertwined with reality. You didn't care, or most of us didn't care what was reality or what was fantasy. Everything was exciting. That sense of being alive, of not thinking every moment. Can you come to this feeling of wholeness, of being present? And take that feeling. That feeling was probably many years ago when you were children, when we were children. And I want us to propose the idea that maybe when we were children, we have a certain wisdom that we slowly lose. That is not true necessarily that we would get wiser with age. We maybe get more information, but many things, and probably the most important things, we always knew. And this sense of connection, this sense of creativity, of openness, and especially this very, very pure sense of intention might be what we need to recover again. And I say recover because it's already inside us, it was there, we were born with it, we lived through it, we have it there. And when we say children, we should remember that we were children. And I was to propose the idea that when we come to our projects, to our research, let's reflect what can we do together with children. Because really, most children have so much wisdom and knowledge that we need for the change we want to make. And we already had so much power and wisdom that we are leaving go away, bit by bit. And I want to invite someone in a video that can express this even better than me, because it's the own voice of whom we're talking about. So now we're going to see a little video, a little message for us from the voice of our own childhood: innocence, purity, creativity, openness. So let's watch this video, which is pretty much talking to our own child in us.
Hi, GESA people. My name is Daniel Lajara. I live in the Dominican Republic in the city of Bani. I have to tell you that I'm so grateful with God because He let me be a part of the initiative AHI. In my country, we fight every day for the rights of the children, and that's so nice, and it's incredible when you see a kid voting for his favorite young mayor in his respective school. That's so amazing. We are so democratic in this country. The kids have a voice, an opinion, and we are just trying to be different every day, and I hope that you will be like us or much better. So good luck, God bless you, and don't worry. Daniel Abreu will explain you what you're gonna do, when, why, and all these things.
So Daniel Lajara is his name, and he's already having a TV program in his community, and he's already promoting the children's values. And again, the main point is that this magic that we already had, we can call on the magic again, the magic of our childhood, of the innocence, and that's the power that we need to move on for the future we want. Thank you.